So let's start on with our game state. Okay, so as we've started our other things, let's go ahead and pull off this begin play right here. And a lot of what we do on the game state is going to be done on the server. So Switch has authority, same as before. Let's add the call to our parent function. So we have that called in case for whatever reason we add more children to the game state. Get rid of this tick node for now. And then what we're going to do is add a custom event. Dot. And we're going to change that to start score tick. Okay, we're going to make that its own event over here. Now, why do I make an event that calls another event or a function that calls another event? That's because I anticipate in a begin play, you're going to have a lot more logic when you customize this yourself. You're just going to have a lot more. So that's why I don't just start running functionality right off a begin play. It's with the always building with the expectation that this thing is going to grow, because they do. When you're really making a full game, this thing will get massive. This thing will be thousands of lines long. So that's how we're treating it. So let's go ahead and wrap it. All right, and then our score tick. Once again, so how I'm imagining this and how it does actually turn out in the real world is you got a whole line running off of here, a gazillion things long. You have another whole line here, which is why you would have, more. You don't necessarily have to have this. The reason I even do another check here is if somebody were to call score tick for whatever reason, if they called score tick, it would still have its own authority check. I'm not saying you have to have it here. It is a little bit OCD, but it makes me feel better to know that that definitely is only going to be running on the server. Okay, so we made a timer handle earlier on, at least I thought we did. Let's see, is game storing, we put it in here, score tick timer handle. Why aren't you showing up under my variables? Ah, okay, that makes sense. It got accidentally put in there as a local variable. We don't want to do a local variable. It didn't hurt anything for our test, but it's a good thing we checked it right now. Just go ahead and get rid of that. Get rid of local variables. All right, let's promote it to a member variable. Cool. All right, so is game scoring is now actually using a member variable, which is good because now we're going to use it. So in our begin play, we want to, so we could do two things. We could say, hey, is this thing active, and then run it, which was my plan. But we can just use the function that we made that we were just looking at. So is game scoring? If it's not, we want to do something. Which is start scoring. Line that all not nice and easy. I'm going to set timer by event, because we're going to start our score loop timer. This is different from our capture point timers. And they're going to have a score tick rate. Okay, and then let's just score it at about a second. Every tick is second. We want to make sure this is looping. And then we're going to save the timer handle, because now it actually is getting initialized. So it's real. Just double checking that I actually set this to something, because as you can see, it's common to forget your basic setup. At least for me it is. Let's start or tick. Okay, cool. Run that in there like that. Uh-oh. All right, so we got our score. That's going. Now, what is this thing actually going to do? All right. Going to run this event. I almost forgot. Create event. Create matching event. Score tick. Cool. I'm just trying to fit everything in. Oop. Nice. File, save, score, tick. All right. Then we want to score the captured points. So you're only going to get scores for points for. You're only going to accumulate points if the capture point is completely owned by another team. So that team can only actually score. So as you're capturing the point, you're not getting any points for it. It's not until you totally have it. So we only want to score the points that have been captured. So let's make a function called score capture points. Then let's back up a little bit and put it and actually call it. So we make sure we call it because that happens too. All right, score capture points. Okay, so we're going to score our capture points. But first, we want to make sure that we have to actually have this the container for the capture points. We did all the functions for it, stuff like add capture point, but we didn't actually store them here. So now it's time to do that. So before we can score them, which is what we want to do, we want to make sure that they're properly getting added. So let me go ahead and run the logic for that. Let's start with add capture point, which is where we originally put the function. Okay, so our capture point, it spawns in and it will call this. So at least we have that going on. Okay, so let's make an array. Okay, and make sure we take this into, let's see, a singleton right here. Okay, we got capture points. Now we need to make an array. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. And let's make these capture points. Let's make this replicated as a rep notify. Okay, so we got a rep notify. Let's go ahead and do what we to be consistent with what we've done with all of our other rep notifies. Let's go ahead at our on rep capture points, and then let's add our dispatcher. Oh, that's the function name. To say, there we go. On capture points changed. Oh, now there is a weird bug with Unreal where if you try to put in an array to a dispatcher, it loses its mind. It throws a little warning up, so we're not going to do that. But we do know that the capture points, we do know the ones that have changed. We only have one array, and we know what class it is, so it's not that big of a deal. We'll just, instead of passing through the capture points, we'll just have to go to the game state, because there's only one of them, get the capture points. You'll see it as we do it in the widget. It's not that big of a deal. At least we know that when they're updated, and that's what this onRep is going to achieve. Okay, so for add capture point, we're going to, oops, wrong one, as authority. Okay, we want to make sure first off that the capture point is valid. And then we want to get that array of capture points that we just made. And we want to say, hey, does it contain the point we're trying to add? So we don't add it twice. So contains, okay, capture point object reference not compiled capture by world widget. Oh, we didn't set this to the right thing. Capture point object, capture point world widgets. Yeah, so we don't want to look at our world widgets yet. That's not what we want to do. So we can just simply come over here and see, okay, it must have got cut off from the text. I couldn't see that it was a world widget. So we just have to simply go capture point. Instead of capture point world widget, we just have capture point object, change variable type. And we'll run through all of this, no big deal. Go back to our game state. There it is. It yells, it's fine, disconnect. Do a new contains. Boom. We're fine. All right. Does it contain the item? One of these days. There it goes. Next up there. Let's say cool. Maybe bring it up a little bit. Oops. All right. Q Queen to get those straightened out. Okay, so if it does not contain those, then we want to do something. Add a branch. Okay, if it doesn't contain them, what are we going to do? Okay, so if it doesn't contain them, we're going to add them. But we don't want to just add them into this array in any order. We want to add them in alphabetical order. Now, in C++, this is extremely simple. It's just a less than greater than. It will be able to read, we're going to assign each point a letter, and then it would simply, you could do a less than or greater than on a letter, and it would, you could sort them. And so not only could you do a greater than or less than on the letter, you could have a sorting function. You could have like a sort by predicate or anything like that, and it will automatically sort all this stuff for you. But here in Blueprint, we kind of have to do this stuff manually. And I didn't see a great way to alphabetize things this without involving another library from outside the editor, from standard. So we're just going to go ahead. It's going to be a little rough around the edges. It's going to work just fine. It's not going to have any bugs or anything like that. It's just going to be a lot more logic than I think you should need to do to put something in alphabetical order, but it is what it is. So we're going to start off by doing something a little weird. What we're going to do is we're going to start figuring out what the index it should be in the array. So let's start off by making a variable called maxint, and I think what we can do, once again, I hate constantly referencing code and saying, oh, how much better it is, but these are the types of limitations that you run into with Blueprint, and you wouldn't know them unless you did both, right? If you did code and Blueprint. So, for example, for what I'm about to do, I would just say maxint or something like that. And what it does, it takes the highest number that an int can be, and you could initialize your variable that way. Well, we can't do that. So all we're going to do is we're just going to say maxint, and I'm going to change that to an int. Okay, and I'm going to initial. Oh, I don't want it to be an array. I want it to be. Oh, this is an inch. I need to make it a single right there. Okay, and what I can do, I can just draw the right. I'm holding left click and driving it all the way over, and I'm picking the highest number that int can take. Okay, and there's a method to the madness here. Okay, so let's throw that in there. Maxint. And that's always going to stay that way. We're not going to modify that value. And then we're going to promote to local variable, new capture point index. Okay, so we've taken new capture point index. Now that's 0, but what this will do was it'll initialize it to that max value. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and loop through our capture points. Okay, and for each one, let's make sure that it is valid. Okay, now I'm going to try to get a variable that I know we don't have. Okay, and it's called the point name. So let's go into our capture point and let's give it a name variable. Okay, point. All right, and let's give it a string, okay? And let's initialize that to x, because we probably won't ever have a point named x. We'll know right away if our initialization failed or was correct. So we'll give it the name of x. So let's go back to where we were. Okay. In the add capture point, we're going to grab the point name that we just created. We'll say get character. The character is number. And we're going to grab the first index because we're only going to have capture points with one index, which is the first. Because basically, on a string is just an array of characters. And we're only using the first character here, so it's safe to just get the 0 index. And it's going to get it as a number, so it's going to have a value associated with it. So that's how we're going to do our less than, greater than operations. We're going to take the capture point that's coming in, and we're basically comparing it against all the capture points that already exist, and we're seeing which basically where it should go within that array to be in alphabetical order. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna get the point name, and we're gonna get the character's number. So let's just do this. Control C, Control V. Grab our capture point right here. Okay. Whoa. Went crazy there for a minute. All right, there it is. Okay, we already checked if it was valid early on, right here. So this is valid. Okay. We want to say, hey, is the point we're trying to add less than the point that already exists in the array? Is it less? Which means, should it come first? Basically, if it does come first, we want to get the index of the point that we're replacing and set that as the new capture point index. So easier to show it like this. Boom, get the array index that this thing is, set it here. Right? That there, and then over here like that. Okay, there's one little tricky condition that you also have to ask yourself here. So you also have to say, and, because we got another condition to check. Is the value that we're comparing less than any value that we've determined is the lowest point so far, which is kind of hard to think about. But basically, we don't want to come across a point where we're like, oh yeah, our new point is less, and so we should shove it in there. But really, we were already in a lower position as we loop through the array. So yeah, the array should already be ordered, but just in case there's something in there that's not in order, depends on how you loop through the array, right? So you want to make sure that you didn't already come across something lower. That's what that check is for. Okay, and let's continue on. So we got that extra little check in there to make sure that we're good there. So we're gonna actually pull off the completed node, and we're gonna do one last check before adding it, and it's if the maxint. So let's just pull off of here, and the new capture point index are the same. Does that mean something? Okay, so if these values are equal, that means that so if new capture point index is still equal to max int, that means we never found a new place for it to go. So that would mean that the letter we're looking at is higher than any of the existing values in the array. And if that's the case, we just need to add it to the end of the array, because it's like, okay, buddy, you're last in line, because you're obviously a higher letter in the alphabet. Okay, it's safe to do an add here because we did a contains check, which is essentially what an add unique is. So we wouldn't want to do add unique because then we would be duplicating our checks. In this case, we definitely don't need to do that, and we needed to do the contains check earlier because we didn't need to run need to run through the for loop in the first place. This contains check we did up here, so it's safe to just do an add right here. Another cool thing we can do with local variables here, rather than drag a huge line all the way across through here, we certainly could do that, but you can just type that name in and it will come up as a local variable. So in capture point, if we just did in capture point, this is why it's important to give yours naming. Local variables give their own little name like that. Otherwise, it would be like new variable or something not recognizable. And especially if it had the same name, it might get confusing. So that's a good naming convention to use. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that what we should do is just take capture points here and just drag it in here so we don't have big nasty lines running through the whole screen. Now, let's add an insert. Okay, and then we can plug in the index that we want this thing to go at, which is going to be our new capture point index. Okay. So that should hopefully get us in alphabetical order. Gosh, these nodes sometimes they just kill me. Okay, there it goes. And just to reiterate, we're just basically overriding an index. So when you insert, it's just going to do exactly how it sounds. It's not going to overwrite the where we're inserting. It's just going to shove it over, so that way you got the new point where it should be in the array.